Nigerian police arrived at the scene with automatic rifles and body armor, responding to attacks on South African businesses in Lagos. They're in retaliation for a recent flare-up of violence against foreigners in and around Johannesburg that has killed at least 5 people.
I am not in support of violence, because to me it's a form of violence. But one thing is this: Nigerians are the most accommodating people in Africa. That's a fact. For them to have reacted at this time, they seem to have been pushed to the wall.
Protests have also broken out in Zambia. Demonstrators there are calling on the South African government to act.
Why must we be afraid to go to South Africa? Which South Africa has ever been based in Zambia? Which one? We want the ambassador to address us. We are tired.
South Africa has seen attacks against foreigners intensify since 2008. Analysts say the xenophobia is rooted in the perception that people from other countries are taking jobs from locals. The continent's most industrialized economy is home to about 4 million migrants. Resentment has worsened due to an economic slump. South African GDP grew by less than 1% in the first half of the year, and unemployment has risen to 29%, the highest rate in a decade. The government has promised to put an end to the attacks on foreigners.
There's just no justification whatsoever for people who have a sense that their jobs are being taken by people from foreign lands to attack them, to destroy properties, and actually to kill them. This must be stopped.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says the recent launch of the African Free Trade Area means the continent's economies will become more closely intertwined. That means any unrest will have widespread economic consequences. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Let's get more on this now from Ndumiso Hadebe. He's an economist from the Pax Africana Investment Holdings in Johannesburg. Thank you for joining us on the program. South Africa's unemployment rate stands at 29%. So 1 in 4 South Africans is unemployed. Foreigners are often blamed for taking jobs. Is there any truth to that, or is this the spreading of misinformation?
Well, the South African situation with respect to the economy has been quite dire. I mean, in the first quarter of 2019, our economy contracted by 3.1%, which was largely attributable to the lack of energy from the power utility being Eskom in the South African economy, which is currently undergoing reforms. But in the second quarter, which is data that came out this week, the GDP numbers recorded a 3.1%. And of course, we have high levels of unemployment. But I think what has been happening in recent events or this past week in the South African economy has been exacerbated by some of the socio-economic challenges that the country currently faces. Earlier, post our democracy, we did not necessarily have these kinds of violences, primarily because the South African economy, prior to the 2008 global financial crisis, was growing at levels of 5, 6 to 7%. So primarily, this situation has been exacerbated by the socio-economic challenges that South Africa currently faces. Because since the dawn of democracy in 1994, South Africa has had a sense of trade openness and migration openness, not only from foreigners in the African continent, but across the globe. So much so that foreigners in South Africa are integrated within local communities, whether it be in more urban areas or less urban areas in the South African economy. Now, unfortunately, due to the socioeconomic challenges that are exacerbated by a subdued economic climate, 29% levels of unemployment in the South African economy, and perceptions of jobs being taken by certain foreigners have, in a sense, exacerbated the current situation. And part of it has been quite largely misinformation and, in a sense, in certain instances, fake news to exacerbate the situation.
Okay. The recent launch of the African Free Trade Area means that the continent's economies will be more closely connected. How is this affecting not just South Africa's economy, but economies throughout the continent?
It affects the South African economies across the continent quite significantly. As you would already know, the levels of intra-regional trade in the African continent is significantly low, at around rates of around 17%, and in certain instances 6%, depending on which regional blocks you look at within the continent of Africa. And of course, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement aims to address these. And according to the African Union by 2028, with the ultimate goal to have one monetary union as a consequence of these developments.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. We've run out of time. And Ndumiso Hadebe, thank you so much for joining us.